So as we celebrate your individual academic achievements, we want to acknowledge the sacrifices made by your families and your support networks. Dr. Gomez, would you please come join me, Senior Associate Dean of Medical Education? Once we get the door unlocked. And was a student going to join you or just you, Dr. Gomez? Come on, Dr. Gomez. Like there. Yeah, no, they're not shy.
Chair Horvath, honorable supervisors, I introduce you to the class of 2028. If they could all stand, please. As mentioned by our honorable representative, Holly Mitchell of the 2nd District, this school lays in her district and is committed to take care of the underserved. Our students are donning their white coats, representative of empathy and service to communities, all communities, especially those vulnerable communities, communities of those who are ill, those who have been underserved in the past. No more is the white coat going to be a symbol of disparaging care, resource care only for the wealthy. We commit that this white coat will represent true empathy and true care for all communities, communities of color, LGBTQ, communities of disability, all communities that are deserving of care. And I know the passion of these students. We've met them now for the last 4 weeks, and we love them, and we're going to nurture them, and we're going to prepare them to take care of our community in Los Angeles and beyond.
Thank you. Thank you.
Department of Arts and Culture, Kristen Sakota, as well as the General Manager of LA City Department of Cultural Affairs, Daniel Tarika, our French Deputy Consul General, Dmitry Demanyenko, leadership and students from California Arts Institute of the Arts, Art Center College of Design, and Otis College of Arts and Design, as well as LA 28, represented by Abigail Weintraub and Patricia Foe. As many of us saw during the opening ceremonies for the Paris Games, art has the power to provide meaningful context that reflects local identities and gives a voice to the host city and the country, as well as open the door for international cultural exchange. The poster competition we're celebrating today is part of a historic collaboration between the City of Paris, the City of Los Angeles County, and Seine-Saint-Denis region. The collaboration includes Olympic leadership exchange on the role of arts and culture in the Games, and a historic memorandum of understanding for cultural cooperation for the 2024 and 2028 Games. It's a series of LA Paris artistic collaboration projects as part of the 2024 Paris Cultural Olympiad. Students from Otis College of Art and Design, Art Center College of Design, Cal Arts, and EPSA in Paris created beautifully illustrated poster designs highlighting their talent, creativity, and Olympic themes. As we can see, the 24 winning posters illustrate and celebrate the strong bond between Paris and Los Angeles, our shared cultural richness, and the values that bind us. One reports on the county's implementation of the people experiencing homelessness missions, including a review of the City of Grants Pass versus Johnson et al. Decision, which will be taken up with item 2, developing a countywide strategy for addressing encampments after Grants Pass. For members of the public on the telephone, please press 1 then 0 now to comment on these items. We have a very esteemed panel here with us, led by our Sheriff, Robert Luna, as well as several of our department directors and others. So if you would please introduce yourselves, as I know you're going to be doing a presentation, so everyone knows who's here with us this morning. I know this item was requested by Supervisor Hahn, but we'll begin with your presentation, and then I will turn it to her to begin our discussion.
Thank you very much, and good morning. I'm Shri Todoroff. I'm the Director of the Homeless Initiative with the Chief Executive Office. I will go ahead and let people introduce themselves as we go through our presentation today. We can start with the slide deck. It's very brief, but it'll be helpful to have a little visual to go along with our spoken words. So on July 9th, your board approved a motion directing the Homeless Initiative, County Council, the Sheriff, and the CEO of LAHSA to provide a verbal report back to the board at today's meeting with a review of the grants passed decision, its potential implications in Los Angeles County, and any recommendations. We can go to the next slide, please. The motion was amended to direct that the presentation include input from the July 26th meeting of the Executive Committee on Regional Homelessness Alignment. And to organize our presentation, Anna Lai from County Council will provide background on the case history of the Grants Pass versus Johnson case. She'll also present a review of the legal decision, what the decision does, and what it does not do. From there, Dr. Adams-Kellum will highlight the expected implications of the decision on our collective response to end homelessness in every community in LA County. And then Dr. Adams-Kellum, Sheriff Luna, and I will present our collective recommendations on how we move forward. We'll start with County Council and Anna Lai.
Good morning, Supervisors.
Please speak right into the mic.
Good morning, Anna Lai from County Council. Today I'll be talking about the Grants Pass decision, but before I do that, I want to quickly go over the background of how we got here today. In 2018, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals issued a decision that had significant impact for how cities approach homelessness. In the case Martin versus Boise, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals held that imposing criminal penalties against homeless individuals who are sitting, sleeping, or lying outside on public property when there are no shelter beds available constitutes cruel and unusual punishment under the 8th Amendment. In 2022, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, building on the principles of the Martin case, ruled in Johnson versus City of Grants Pass that civil ordinances that prohibited sleeping and camping in public and provided for civil fines which later become criminal offenses were also inconsistent with the cruel and unusual punishment of the 8th Amendment. In 2023, the City of Grants Pass appealed the Ninth Circuit decision to the United States Supreme Court, arguing that both the Martin case and the Grants Pass case were wrongly decided. Earlier this year in January, the Supreme Court agreed to hear the case. In March, Los Angeles County, along with many other counties, cities, and organizations, filed an amicus brief. In April, oral arguments were held, and in June 28, the Supreme Court issued a ruling in favor of Grants Pass. The question that was presented to the court was whether the enforcement of generally applicable laws regulating camping on public property constitutes cruel and unusual punishment prohibited by the 8th Amendment. The court, by a 6-3 vote, ruled in favor of Grants Pass and held that enforcing generally applicable laws regulating camping on public property, meaning laws that do not target a person's status, like being homeless, do not violate the 8th Amendment's protection against cruel and unusual punishment. So what does the Grants Pass decision do? The potential implication of this opinion is that cities can now enforce local laws that criminalize sleeping or camping in public areas, even for homeless people. What the Grants Pass opinion does not do is that the opinion does not mandate any specific actions by the county or cities to enact or enforce the anti-camping laws. In fact, the court expressly stated that cities are not bound to adopt public camping laws. Instead, they are free to add additional substantive protections for their in-house. The Grants Pass opinion also does not address whether enforcement could violate the rights of homeless individuals beyond the issue of cruel and unusual punishment under the 8th Amendment. And the reason is because there are other constitutional protections that remain in place. The 4th Amendment still limits property seizure by the government. This includes homeless individuals' personal belongings. Authorities are required to provide adequate notice and opportunity to reclaim belongings before disposal. The court did not decide whether Grants Pass ordinance violate the Eighth Amendment's excessive fines clause, which prohibits the government from imposing fines that are seen as unreasonably harsh or disproportionate to the offense committed. So even for offenses like camping, fines cannot be so excessive that they become a form of punishment beyond the scope of the offense. In sum, both the majority and the dissent acknowledge the narrow scope of the opinion. I will now pass the presentation to Dr. Adams-Kellum to talk about the implication of the Grants Pass decision.
Good morning, Supervisors. Dr. Felicia Adams-Kellum, CEO of LASA. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today. As we all digest the scope and implications of this ruling, LASA and our partners must consider the potential impacts of local shifts towards criminalization of camping and how those shifts might affect the framework to end homelessness in LA County adopted by the board in 2022. The framework requires cities to coordinate with LASA and all impacted partners to prevent homelessness, connect unsheltered people to outreach services, provide them with housing, and to deliver stabilizing care. Criminalization is intentionally not part of the county's framework because it makes the problem worse by creating more barriers along people's path to housing, and it runs counter to our goals to create a LASA instead focuses on providing resources and services before enforcement takes place. This guidance is communicated to all LASA outreach staff during onboarding that they should not be present if enforcement takes place, but instead focus on providing resources and referrals when possible before the police come in. LASA determined that its role was to provide services and outreach rather than enforcement, and that being present when enforcement occurred would harm the trust and rapport LASA outreach workers build with people experiencing homelessness. There are multiple potential impacts of increased criminalization. 1, exacerbation of racial inequities is a key concern. Black, African American, Indigenous, Latino, and other people of color are already overrepresented in the homeless and criminal justice populations. Through the work of LASA's Ad Hoc Committee on Black People Experiencing Homelessness and the current Latinx Task Force, we have heard directly from these communities that are the most impacted by their interactions with the homeless service system. Shifts towards the criminalization of camping on public property would exacerbate the inequities these communities already experience at disproportionate rates. Ticketing, fining, and in other ways, additionally policing homeless individuals of color will further the deep racial inequities they already face in the housing system, exacerbating homelessness in populations already direly impacted by the systemic racism that we see in our system. We also know that enforcement is an ineffective approach with this population. The evidence is clear that criminalization is an ineffective homeless intervention. Since the emergency declarations in the county and the city of LA, as well as in other cities, we have ended the unsheltered homelessness for over 3,000 people through 56 Insight Safe operations and 17 Pathway Home operations. These are operations that work because we offer credible pathways to housing, not threats of fines or arrests. An additional concern is displacement. Increased enforcement of camping restrictions could push people experiencing homelessness into surrounding communities and unincorporated areas. This would make it more difficult to provide services in their home communities and exacerbate capacity constraints in communities that do not criminalize camping. As people are forced to move due to the threat of citations and fines, it makes it harder for outreach teams to locate, connect, and build trust with people experiencing homelessness. People who have been displaced are also more likely to seek secluded locations where they are at greater risk of becoming victims of crimes and those crimes are less likely to be reported to law enforcement. Finally, the misalignment of strategies is counterproductive. Leaning on increased criminalization of camping without investing in an adequate supply of interim and permanent housing would be misaligned with the county's framework to end homelessness. It would also strain the existing system because there would be an increased need for outreach coordination and interim housing to ensure people are not criminalized.
Thank you. And next slide, please. We would now like to talk about our recommendations and where we go from here. We are collectively clear that the implementation of these 5 recommendations will help us mitigate any negative impacts from the grants pass decision. We will start with recommendation number 1 and Dr. Adams-Kellum.
Thank you, Cherie. I am addressing recommendation 1, as you noted. The county, LAHSA, and our providers know how to end homelessness without criminalizing people's survival strategies. We know how to end homelessness, and our success is not theoretical. It is measurable. Since the launch of Inside Safe and Pathway Home, unsheltered homelessness has dropped by over 5%, while the number of people in shelters rose by almost 13%. In the most recent pit count, we saw significant declines in vehicular homelessness and a 31% decline in the number of makeshift shelters. This progress is no accident, and criminalization played no role. Instead, this progress is the result of LA County and our municipal partners using evidence-based, trauma-informed techniques, such as establishing strong encampment resolution coordination by leveraging our emergency unified command structures, providing ample time to engage people living in encampments and documenting their access and functional needs, prioritizing trusted relationships, transparency, and rapport with encampment residents to ensure their agency in the voluntary rehousing process, using a trauma-informed care approach and offering low-barrier housing options to ensure people want to come inside. Preparing enough interim and permanent housing alternatives so unhoused people have somewhere appropriate to go. And partnering with credible and experienced providers with deep ties to the community and letting them lead, and also leaning in to people with lived experience in this work. I'll turn you back over to Cherie.
Thank you. Recommendation number 2 is to partner with municipalities on evidence-based solutions. So the collective efforts of cities, councils of government, and the county to prevent homelessness, connect unsheltered people to outreach and services in their community, provide our residents with affordable, impactful for reducing and preventing homelessness, and strategies that further displace and marginalize people. We have established robust partnership with cities and councils of government and are growing those partnerships by creating local solution funding agreements, innovation funds, regional coordination funds, city and council of government interim housing fund, and substantial new partnerships on local encampment resolutions through the Inside Safe and Pathway Home program. We have also within this county with different jurisdictions, including the county and some cities, have secured several rounds of the state's encampment resolution funding that we are investing in local communities. The county will continue to work with cities to expand partnerships that address homelessness through interim and permanent housing, aligning resources, and regional coordination. This includes partnering with cities to bring in new resources, such as through Pathway Home and through funding that we're able to secure, such as the state encampment resolution grants. Recommendation number 3 is to publicly acknowledge homelessness as a regional crisis. We are not able to dictate how our municipal partners respond to the grants pass ruling, but we can invite them to publicly align their strategies with our framework to end homelessness, which focuses on prevention, coordination, connecting people to resources through outreach and engagement, housing, both interim and permanent, and stabilization through supportive services. We can all publicly declare our intent to be good neighbors by committing to avoid displacement policies that shuffle homelessness from one jurisdiction to another. We need regional alignment to address homelessness by investing in interim permanent housing, wrapping services around our vulnerable neighbors, and preventing homelessness from happening. At the July 26th Executive Committee for Regional Homelessness Alignment, the committee members did discuss the concept of the Good Neighbor Pledge to affirm their dedication to practices that prioritize coordination, offer services, and achieve sustainable long-term solutions. At least one COG has drafted and is considering such a pledge. More are also looking at it. There was discussion among the committee members to take back the concept of the Good Neighbor Pledge to their jurisdictions to garner support. I will hand it to Sheriff Luna.
Good morning, and thank you for having me as part of this team. It's amazing. I've never been so happy to be crowded amongst this table, and the reason for that is the fact that we collaborate so well in our county to take on such a challenging problem or challenge. So I just want to make sure that everyone understands from the LA County Sheriff's Department, we take a service-led approach. We have for years, and we will continue to do that with these tough challenges. Our Homeless Outreach Services co-response team has been actively engaging with individuals in encampments across our county for many years, effectively connecting them with essential services and temporary housing. And I say that not just from our host team, but what makes us so effective is the collaborative effort that we have with all of our partners you're hearing from up here. Our approach emphasizes sustained outreach and comprehensive assessments before any resolution or displacement may occur. We absolutely focus on a constitutional approach. Being homeless is not a crime, and we will maintain our focus on criminal behavior rather than an individual status, which is key. As always, any criminal activity will be addressed accordingly. The governor's executive order, for example, will not alter the way our department approaches or manages the unhoused population. But though it will increase the fact that we have to communicate with the CHP more often, because if they are doing cleanups, we want to make sure they're coordinating with us as local officials. And just so you're aware, I've been directly communicating with the commissioner of the California Highway Patrol, Sean DeRee, both last week and even up to this morning to make sure that we are moving forward together as we do this. Additionally, the department has very strict acceptance criteria for bookings into our custody facilities, and our protocols will remain the same for misdemeanor offenses. It's important to note that the idea of criminalizing homelessness is not the answer, as my partners up here have said. So we will not change our established custody standards because of what we're hearing about today. But in all my conversations, and I'll talk about that with our partners in contract city and independent cities, they're very concerned because there are individuals, not groups of people, that are committing crimes. They want to make sure they're going to be held accountable. We will still respond and help and assist and do whatever we can, service first, or care first, service first, and then enforcement. We remain committed to collaboratively working with our county partners to compassionately address homelessness encampments and provide constitutional care and service-oriented assistance. This takes a countywide department coordinated effort, and it is done through the Los Angeles County Chief Executive Office, Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority, the Department of Mental Health, the Department of Public Health, Public Works, and Animal Care, just to name a few. And as I wrap up my comments, and I mentioned it earlier, I want all of our supervisors to know that this is an issue that is on the forefront of concern for many of our elected officials and leaders. So back on July 22nd, with the help of the LA County Independent Chiefs, we held a meeting that included every chief in Los Angeles County. And for the strict purposes of communicating and making sure that we were going to be good neighbors in a strategic manner. We wouldn't be pushing problems off on each other as we're dealing with this. And let's be frank, for us, 42 contract cities, 42 mayors, 42 councils, and a lot of them are very diverse in the way they think. I think we went a long ways of getting on the same page. I met on the 24th with my partner from LASA, the good doctor. We had a really good conversation. On the 25th, I met with contract city managers to make sure that we're communicating and coordinating. I've been communicating with the CHP commissioner myself. And then yesterday I had a meeting that included over 200 members of contract and independent cities to provide our approach and encourage that we be strategic and good neighbors. And I'd really like to publicly thank Marcel Rodardi for helping me in getting that meeting together. So with that, that concludes my comments.
And we have concluded our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Hahn, I will turn it to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate the panel here today. Again, this was a response to a motion that I brought forth because it just seemed like there was a lot of confusion, a lot of assumptions about the Supreme Court decision, so I thought it would be appropriate that we have all the right people here talking to us and giving us a better perspective about what that decision means to us here. As I said, it's also raised concern among our homeless providers and our advocates about the potential criminalization of homelessness. And I think a lot of our cities are looking towards us here in the county how we can work together to address this crisis. I know contract cities, you've already mentioned that. I see Jennifer Perez, the new president of Contract Cities, is here today. Marcel Rodardi, executive director, has also made some comments that I listened to yesterday that I was glad to hear. But you know, I think what we're feeling too is that I think a lot of people were a little bit nervous about this decision because we're feeling from a lot of our cities kind of a little bit of fatigue, particularly encampment fatigue. And before, many of our local jurisdictions felt like their hands were tied in terms of what they could do, but this feels a little bit about like their hands have been untied in terms of what constitutes cruel and unusual punishment. So, you know, they're tired of seeing encampments when they go to work or take the kids to school, and but I think we're going to hear it a lot today, and I know I can say it right now that our jails are just not the appropriate place to put someone who is experiencing homelessness in. We all know the condition of our jails. We know they're already overcrowded, and this is just not a good solution. But I think we're all concerned about, you know, what's going to happen. And also, I had some of our cities reach out to us to see what authority the county has to prevent cities from pushing homeless individuals into other cities. And I'm going to ask that question. And I worry about our unincorporated area where sometimes they can be negatively affected by policies from neighboring cities. So I think this is a really good discussion today. I know my colleagues have a lot of good questions as well. Let me just start, and Anna, you're representing the county council, right? So let me just start by saying, again, for clarification, if a city or county were to regulate the time and place, like where you can have an encampment or where not, would that violate being cruel and unusual as you see this decision? Or is that something that we can now do, is regulate where an encampment? Because I think there's a lot of people that are like, you know, I'm okay with encampments, but right here just is not healthy, right? It's not safe for you. It's not safe for the neighborhood. Can cities and counties begin regulating sort of where these encampments are without violating the cruel and unusual piece of that amendment?
Thank you for the question.
Can you
It
speak
is
right
up to-
into the mic, please, just so everyone can hear? Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Supervisor. It is up to the individual municipalities to decide whether to enforce or not.
Right, but I'm saying, I don't know, Don, you know what I'm trying to say is, you know, it's one thing to say, oh, we want you to be criminalized. It's another to say, can we regulate
Time, place, and manner.
time, place, and manner? And does that is that? And I thought that was part of what we were asking to clarify with this decision, was, does that constitute cruel and unusual punishment to regulate time, place, and manner of where people are sleeping?
Well, the opinion doesn't address that specifically, but what the opinion does say is that enforcement of whatever ordinances are on the books, as long as they are neutral, regardless of whether therefore, as long as they are neutral, so long as they are not homeless persons specific, they are just neutral encampment laws, time, place, and manner, that would not violate cruel and unusual. But if they're targeting a homeless population and status, that would be
Okay.
a violation.
And does the county have any legal remedy or avenues should cities begin to push homeless encampments to other cities or into our unincorporated? Is there some legal avenue we have?
So I know some cities are already exploring intergovernmental agreements as a potential solution. However, the effectiveness of these agreements is uncertain. Alternatively, cities could pursue legal action against another city for public nuisance, but this would require a thorough investigation of the relevant facts and the circumstances.
Okay, thank you. And I was glad to see, Cherie, in the presentation, kind of what works and kind of sort of doubling down on what works. And certainly Pathway Home is a strategy that we have seen very positive results. And just based a little bit on this decision and some of the anxiety out there, Cherie, where are we in terms of ramping up the Pathway Home? I know since March we've been hoping you would say at least one a week. How are we doing?
Yes, and thank you. And I think, that solutions such as really comprehensive encampment resolution programs such as Pathway Home, such as Inside Safe, are the way that we should be responding to encampments and are the best practice. It does need to come with engagement. It does need to come with outreach, with trust building. It needs to come with housing. We need to have places to bring people inside, and we need to create pathways to permanent housing. Solutions such as Pathway Home are that full continuum, full circle of solution, because we are intentionally adding all of those components. So the outreach, the
No matter what happens here, still will have the discretion if there is a crime committed that somebody's going to still potentially be cited or arrested if they commit a crime. That doesn't mean that that's going to happen if somebody's in a tent in an encampment. So
Right.
just clarifying those things
But
was very
the
helpful.
crime is not being unhoused. The crime is a criminal activity.
Exactly, and the law is very clear on that.
Care of item 2, I'm going to turn to Supervisor Solis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to commend you, Supervisor Hunt, for setting this item for us and really for setting the tone for the County of Los Angeles and all of the board offices here. And I'm very impressed with the panel. I'm very happy with the presentation. I think a lot of people over the weekend were very jittery, including many of us who got frantic press calls about, what does this mean? Are you changing your direction? And nothing could be further from the truth. Unfortunately, some things are better deliberated at the local level. And oftentimes we're not consulted, unfortunately. While we're well intended and so are folks in Sacramento, I think there's opportunity for us to work, hopefully with folks in Sacramento, so that we can better understand what their motivation is and I know where my values are. Care first, jail last. It's been that way for a long time. And we can't do enough. Getting beds out there, getting shelters, and collaboration with our cities. I'm glad to see that some of our contract cities and others are here, but I'm really pleased with our providers and with all the tools that we have now that we didn't have almost 10 years ago. I haven't even been here 10 years, but I can tell you there's been a dramatic change in service. So I like what Sheriff has said, service first, because that actually says something very different from where we were even 4 years ago. And I think that's really critical because I think there's a whole lot of people who can learn from LA County and from LASA and our partners that are working on this issue and have been. But I am concerned about what the governor's order asked us to do. And while looking further into what his focus is, it's about state property, parks, Caltrans property. But I want to hear from the panel what that means. When they go in, I understand their requirements for notice is a little different from ours. Can any one of you please speak about that and what we do on occasions? Are we going to be called to assist in those cleanups? Are we going to be involved when, say, there's an area that is adjacent Caltrans property, which in many cases in unincorporated East LA is everywhere? Where are you going to push those people to? Where will they go? Where there'll be shelter made available? And are we responsible for that? And where does the state come in with helping us with that? Because the governor's already said, I gave you the money and you're not using it appropriately, is what I'm gathering. But I don't think that's true. I want to hear from you, if I can, whoever wants to answer that.
Thank you for that question. I will.
Anything going on state property right now. So I guess that's my question. Has the state reached out? Yeah, has the state reached out to let us know in advance when they're going to be doing this so that we can work? Or
Yeah.
have we reached out to the state to ask them if they plan on doing any so that we can be proactive?
So we have, and I'm going to check also with the sheriff and the Dr. Adams Kellum as well. We have had ongoing communications with the state. We have been partnering in this body of work for a while. We are still assessing the shift here because now we're not just talking about Caltrans. We're talking about other state properties where we don't have, we have to build those types of relationships and communication channels with the other state departments that now may be impacted. There have been Caltrans operations going on already. And we do get notice of some of those, and we do seek to support the clients when we're able to. I have not heard yet of an increase in those or witnessed that yet. I want to check with anybody.
Okay, I mean, I guess it should not come as a surprise to anybody on this board that Caltrans is going to be involved in encampment cleanup because of the fire that occurred during the holidays. So we knew that the state had been impacted, and it impacted our transit system. So I think that the executive order is going to go beyond just under the freeways, because I think that the governor had mentioned that Caltrans should be more proactive on encampments as it relates to low proximity to major thoroughfares, highways. You can say something, Sheriff?
No, just that in my communications with Sean Dury, the commissioner, who I find to be an excellent partner.
Board of Supervisors, I hope that we can continue to expand on the solutions that we know work.
Thank you so much. I know the mayor intended to be here, and thank you for being here in her absence. We'll now go to speakers on the phone. Please, moderator, go ahead.
As a final reminder for participants on the telephone, if you would like to address items set matter 1 and 2, if you have not already done so, please press 1 then 0 now to be placed in the speaking queue. Moderator, may we have the first speaker, please?
Our first participant is Genevieve Clabrel. Please unmute and speak directly into your phone. You may begin.
Genevieve, are you there? Genevieve? Okay, next speaker, please.
Our next participant is Paul Avila. Please unmute and speak directly into your phone. You may begin.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay. Yes, good afternoon, Board of Supervisors and attendees. My name is Paul Avila. I'm the founder of Polly's Project, who assists and supports those experiencing homelessness with our street and food outreach. We are a program that is truly boots on the ground. I support item 2 to develop a countrywide strategy for addressing encampments after grants pass. I want to thank Supervisor Solis and Supervisor Harvitt, especially Supervisor Solis, for coming to our 12th annual Giving Back event in Skid Row a few weeks ago. Many of us have been concerned at the Supreme Court ruling, which would lead to the criminalization of homelessness. Being homeless, should not be a crime, and we appreciate this board stating clearly that it will not use the county jails to hold people arrested due to enforcement of anti-camping ordinances. I am also grateful for the county.
Thank you.
will
Your
lead the
time has
effort to
expired. Next speaker, please.
Our next participant is Carolyn Jordan. Please unmute and speak directly into your phone. You may begin.
Hi, you can hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Thank you. Carolyn Jordan, I chair the Brentwood Community Council. Our community is exhausted and frustrated. We've seen the county's care first approach due to the county sidewalk that surrounds the VA. And unfortunately, what we experience is prolonged encampment. We have to re-examine and prioritize important areas we aren't seeing success in. We don't see adequate delivery of mental health services or drug rehabilitation services. It seems you're taking too long in implementing SB 43. You do not protect the public space and our residents from the negative ramifications of prolonged encampment. You don't create any protected area, including the area adjacent to the VA, which operates a significant housing service for homeless vets. We're concerned that you are ignoring potential tools that would protect our
Thank
public
you.
space.
Your time has
and
expired.
encourage-
Next speaker, please.
Our next participant is Joe O'Neill. Please unmute and speak directly into your phone. You may begin.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Joe O'Neill. I'm a volunteer with and I serve on the board of the Sidewalk Project, an arts and harm reduction organization working in Skid Row and MacArthur Park. I support item 2 to develop a countrywide strategy for addressing encampments after grants passed. Many of us were concerned that this decision will lead to the criminalization of homelessness. I support the city or the county not doing this, not using the county jails to hold people arrested or ticketed for being homeless. And I'm grateful that the county will lead the effort to decrease the disparate impacts of anti-camping enforcement. We need to prioritize housing and services to move people indoors to end homelessness and to not waste resources on enforcement for the sake of enforcement. I want to thank Supervisor Solis and Supervisor
Thank
Horvath
you.
for
Your time has
introducing this
expired.
motion.
Next speaker, please.
Our next participant is Elisa Coyle. Please unmute and speak directly into your phone. You may begin.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Elisa Cuello, Mental Health Director at East Valley Community Health Center, where we provide vital healthcare services to the most vulnerable and marginalized population in the East San Gabriel Valley and Pomona communities. I support item 2, which aims to develop a county-wide strategy to addressing encampments following the Grants Pass incident. I want to extend my gratitude to Supervisor Solis and Supervisor Horvath for introducing this crucial motion and rallying the necessary efforts for this call to action. I am encouraged that the county has taken a leadership role in mitigating the impacts of encampment enforcement. Such enforcement will increase the vulnerability of our homeless population by limiting access to essential services, worsening unstable living conditions, and fostering a pervasive sense of hopelessness that will affect our communities. Our duty is to protect the most vulnerable among us, and the urgent need is for a county-wide strategy that brings together regional partners in a unified effort to address and alleviate homelessness through effective solutions, rather than simply displacing them. This approach will yield better outcomes for all our communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Our next participant is Ryan Vaughn. Please unmute and speak directly into your phone. You may begin.
Hi, my name is Ryan Marone, and first off, I would like to first say that I think that we should get more than a minute. There's been plenty of good points that have been cut off. But when it comes to item 2, I would like to stress that we invest first in care first solutions, go straight to the source. So tenants should be protected, rents should be stabilized, evictions should be limited, housing access should be increased. Also, there should be no police involvement, especially with the LA County Sheriff's Department. They should not be involved in addressing houselessness. In terms of housing solutions, again, criminalization is not the answer. Only housing can help. So the county must clarify that jails should not be used for the purpose of targeting by anti-camping ordinances. Also, while I'm at it, I support Measure A. And again, non-carceral responses are needed all around for this situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Our next participant is Layla Murphy. Please unmute and speak directly into your phone. You may begin.
Good morning, Board of Supervisors. My name is Layla Murphy, and I'm representing the Coalition to Abolish Slavery and Trafficking in Los Angeles for one of the nation's oldest and largest service providers for survivors of sex and labor trafficking of all demographics. We want to thank Supervisor Solis and Horvath for their leadership function. What we've learned over the past 25 years of serving survivors is that criminalization of survival worsens our overall public health. The survivors in our care often cite homelessness and criminal records as both a cause and a result of their exploitation. Homelessness and criminal records make someone more vulnerable to the control of a trafficker due to lack of resources, and often survivors are forced to commit crimes by their traffickers during their exploitation and rely on their traffickers for housing, finding themselves homeless and with a criminal record when they escape. Having those criminal records prevents our clients from being able to access safe housing as well as employment benefits and immigration. Criminalizing unhoused individuals will only increase homelessness. We reject the criminalization of homelessness in all ways and encourage the county to focus on strategies that address root causes, such as increased wages, affordable
Thank
housing,
you.
low barrier
Your time has
shelters, tenant
expired.
protections,
Next
and
speaker,
widely
please.
accessible housing.
Our next participant is Roberto Nunes. Please unmute and speak directly.
Cities Association. I was also a member of the Birch. I want to thank Supervisor Solis and Supervisor Hahn for the motions that we're looking at today. I'm here testifying on behalf of our 81 member cities, which include all 42 cities that contract for law enforcement services from Los Angeles County. We fully understand and appreciate the complexities around homelessness crisis and the importance of identifying and implementing solutions which include housing and services. We also understand the need of all of our communities to do their part in providing resources to combat homelessness. As an association, we will encourage all of our cities to take part in the Good Neighbor Pledge. As cities bold their options to clear and remove encampments, we must emphasize the humane treatment of those impacted. We must also allow law enforcement to do its job within the rule of law without impediment. We thank the board for not imposing unnecessary restrictions on law enforcement when they are needed to keep our communities safe. We are encourage a collaborative approach that includes input and collaboration from all stakeholders. We're all in this together. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good afternoon, Chair Horvath and Board of Supervisors. I'm Councilmember Jennifer Perez from the City of Norwalk, and I'm also currently serving as the President for California Contract Cities. Let me be clear, we are not looking to make homelessness illegal. In fact, this past week, the City of Norwalk partnered with the host team and our Sheriff's Department to find solutions. However, there may be occasions where law enforcement needs to do its job protecting our residents by taking dangerous weapons, drugs, and other hazards off our streets. Our #1 goal is to provide housing and services for our unhoused neighbors, but we also need to protect when it comes to enforcing the law. The City of Norwalk relies on the LASD to patrol our streets and to keep our community safe. They should not be hampered from enforcing jailable offenses. Simply being homeless is not a crime. I do not want to see anyone arrested for being homeless. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam President. Next speaker.
Operator, may we have the first speaker, please?
Our first participant is Helen Eggenberg. Please unmute and speak directly into your phone. You may begin.
Hi, my name is Helen Eigenberg. I'm a member of Hangout Do Good and SELA, and I'm speaking as a private citizen. I live in Supervisor District number 3. I'm so grateful to Supervisor Horvath and Solis for the quick action and response to Grants Pass. So I'll be quick. I appreciate the conversation today, and so I just encourage all of you to vote unanimously on yes on item number 2. Thank you for your time and letting me speak.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Our next participant is Diego Rodriguez. Please unmute and speak directly into your phone. You may begin.
I'm my coalition. I spoke at the rally held outside this building in collaboration with several organizations and youth.
For homelessness. So Ms. Kellum, she left, but you gave LASA the duty to help solve this issue. A lot of the RFP contracts that they just put on Friday, they don't have it throughout the year. These are things that are issues. So when you have the contracting staff person that's over the RFPs, a lot of them, they're not advanced or they're delayed or denied. And that's causing you, the county, and the city havoc because you guys hired LASA or created LASA Joint Powers Authority to alleviate these issues. So I do see some improvement in responses, but we do got to do better. And this is specifically, again, for the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority, for DMH and other entities that are supposed to help service providers like us to help do our job. So thank you again for this initiative, and let's follow through.
Thank you. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
My name is Joseph Verney, a student at...
Your phone. You may begin.
Hello, my name is Christopher Nikhil-Bowen, Policy Director with LA Family Housing. LA Family Housing is supportive of Supervisor Horvath and Solis's motion to emphasize the county's care first and jails last approach to encampment resolution. We also support opportunities to expand the county's partnership with cities to address encampments through housing production, shelter, resources, and regional coordination. Further, we support the potential work.
Alex, please make sure to unmute yourself and speak into your phone.
Yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you now. Please go ahead.
Hello? So we stand responsible because people are coming here from other states. And I don't agree with criminalizing the homelessness, but at what point do we take action? Because not everybody's homeless. There's people that are getting their checks monthly. There's people that don't want to work. There's people that are taking advantage. And the only people capitalizing on this is nonprofit organizations that are not doing the work. And that is wrong.
Thank you. Your
And
time has
about
expired.
the youth
Next speaker, please.
Our next participant is Roy Humphreys. Please unmute yourself and speak directly into your phone. You may begin.
Thank God for Trump's survival and the Supreme Court decision. Finally, this initial presentation of the board be somewhat disgusting. Homelessness is a multi-staged, multifaceted operation, and Ryan Serrano of the Hilda Solis office has failed to provide the breakdown thereof. I've told you multiple times you must establish a county-wide system of transient camps. Until you do that, forget about it. You're just wasting time and money. As to the jails, all but Supervisor Barger voted down the $1.1 billion new jail. You are the problem. Gascon and Newsom will be gone in November, thank God. Thomas Sowell and Charles Hurt should be your reading. And Mitchell, thank you for throwing in the race car. We really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Our next participant is Ruth Rubles. Please unmute and speak directly into your...
To our discussion. I want to thank all of our stakeholders for being here today to address these important issues. We know the conditions at Men's Central Jail are unacceptable, and we know that it must close. And as long as it is operational, our county departments must work together to ensure that those in custody, our county employees, and our service providers working there are able to live and work in a humane and safe environment. I want to acknowledge the hard work that our county departments have done, and I also recognize that the Civil Brand Commission's reports show that we must do better. With that in mind, I have a few questions to address what was brought to light in that report. For our Sheriff's Department representatives, if you could explain what kind of training staff receives regarding mental health crisis response, including if they are witnessing out of the ordinary behavior that might not be clearly associated with a mental health crisis as was reported. How are we training our staff?
Thank you, Supervisor. Our staff is given crisis response training as soon as they get out of the academy. And then we have additional crisis response training that is covered throughout the years. They do have refresher training that they need to accomplish. We also work very closely with our partners at CHS, and we conduct drills together, and we have a biannual suicide prevention training that all of our executives attend to provide additional training to staff on what to look for when people are in crisis.
I think it was brought to our attention in this report that there was some erratic behavior that was not addressed in terms of a mental health crisis. So I just want to make sure that we're continuing to provide that training and that people understand what their responsibilities are. And to that end, what happens if a deputy fails to respond appropriately to an inmate in need?
If the allegations prove to be true, we investigate every allegation that a deputy does not respond appropriately to those actions. And in this particular case, we've opened an internal affairs investigation into all of the allegations of misconduct by the staff. So we hold them accountable if the allegations are true, but we're always proactive. When we hear of something like this, we also provide on-the-spot training, thinking that it might be a systematic issue, to make sure everyone's on board. We do that in a number of ways: shift briefings, we push out emails, and we conduct more formal training.
So what does it, you said you hold them accountable. What exactly does that mean?
It depends on what is founded in the investigation. Each case is very different, and it just depends on the severity of the infraction and the past history of the employee.
So should this case be founded, what would an example of accountability look like?
The alleged misconduct falls under a manual of policy and procedures section, which is performance to standard. The discipline range for that violation is anywhere from written reprimand to discharge. And where the discipline will fall at the end of this case depends on what the investigation shows.
Okay. Has the department made any system-wide changes to prevent deputies from watching non-work related videos during shifts? And again, if the allegations reported are true, what range of discipline could a deputy receive?
So immediately upon, for this specific incident, immediately upon hearing the allegation, the video monitor that was used was taken down and removed. We've also pushed out training and conducted briefings for all staff at all facilities, discussing the fact that non-work related videos are not appropriate and will not be tolerated to be watched during shift hours. And then again, the conduct falls within performance to standards, so depending on what the investigation shows, it can be anywhere from written reprimand to discharge.
And how long typically does one of those investigations take?
Statute of limitations on those cases under POBAR is 1 year, so it would be less than 1 year.
And do you have an idea of, on average, how long they take?
Our Internal Affairs Bureau is facing the same staffing shortages as the rest of the department.
So likely you're close to a year then.
It could be. This case has received a lot of attention, and we are asking for regular updates, but it's still, they have a lot of work to do, and we want the investigation to be complete.
Okay, and one of the additional allegations included indications of political stickers or symbols. What is the policy regarding promoting or displaying those kinds of symbols at the work site, and how are you communicating those policies?
The policy related to political speech and stances was disseminated to all personnel. We also periodically conduct inspections of all work areas to make sure that there isn't anything appropriate in those areas. Following this incident, we did not find the specific political rhetoric that was alleged. There were some questionable patriotic type flags that were removed, and that work area has been cleaned and pared down, and we have
on implementation.
I appreciate that. I think one of the things that's going to be really important, we do not want to spend all of our precious time writing very lengthy reports. So what's going to be key is, as these folks come on, we want to develop a report back template where we are reporting to the board on the same, I don't know what the number is, 10, 15, on the same items, so that when you do see the report back, we're actually highlighting what's better, different, or where there hasn't been any changes. That's different than writing like a 20-page summary that very few people have, time to read. So we want to be mindful when we do our report backs that they are easily accessible on what's different and what's better and what is changing.
Thank you very much. Supervisor Barger, I'll turn it to you.
Thank you, and I appreciate those questions, Chair Horvath, because at the end of the day, I think, I talked to someone who was recruited to come over and they don't want to go over because the attitude is for a while. Because every time a report is provided to this board, they either get beat up and or it gets buried. And so I have to say, Fezia, good luck. I think that you pointed out, how many reports have we had on this issue?
We've summarized about 60.
Yeah. And how much have we spent analyzing? Guesstimate?
So we used AI to do the summary for us.
No, but I mean in terms of consultants that we brought on.
We've spent hundreds of thousands on consultants.
So I can't wait for the next report. Which leads me to a question that I just want to understand, because I'm pretty much about just basic common sense. And so my question is to you, Assistant Sheriff, is it Tokar? Most of the MOH inmates are housed at PDC North, and we have some MOH remaining at MCJ. But who are the rest of the inmates who are housed at MCJ? And then can you define what an MOH is for people that may not know?
So MOH is the code that the Sheriff's Department uses for a level of care. And we base it on housing. And it's moderate observation housing is what MOH stands for. And yes, we still have about 650 MOH individuals at Men's Central Jail. In addition to that, Men's Central Jail houses our per population, our administrative segregation population that are highly dangerous or danger to others or themselves that don't necessarily have a mental health component to them. We house sexually violent predators there. Our sex crimes against children are housed there and segregated. Our LGBTQ plus male community in the jail is housed at Men's Central Jail. And then in trial folks, so people that are facing long trials at CCB or one of the downtown facilities are housed there, amongst many others.
So, knowing that, what percentage of those housed at MCJ would you estimate can be diverted?
That's not a question that is easy for me to answer because we look at the stats and the arrest charge that there is in the custody, and it's based upon our antiquated jail management system. From what I can cobble together, and please take this as a generalization without going into individual records so I know, we have about 17% of the population of Men's Central Jail is in for what I classify as a non-violent felony. Those folks, I mean, it could be auto theft, it could be embezzlement, it could be something else. What I don't know, that's the charge that originally pulls up when we just run a full run of the population. But there may be more serious charges along with that non-violent felony, or there may be less, that...
I guess I'm getting at the point that I thought that we were, and I know the sheriff's behind you, that we were looking at diversion for those that didn't need to be held in custody here and now. And so I would think that if there's 17% that can be diverted, my question would be, why are they not being diverted?
And I'm not saying that they can be diverted.
And I'm not quoting you at 17%, but I guess what I'm getting at is the push out on the diversion component will better give us an idea in terms of what no replacement facility would look like. And I'm told by predecessors prior to you that if you look at the population that's in there and you look at the fact that we are applying diversion as we speak, even though my next question was going to be to Sangha about, do we have the beds to fill right now? And it goes hand in hand.
I guess my best answer to that is 75% of the people that are in the jail now, I believe are in for crimes that are not easily diverted. Just looking at the crimes, they're serious, they're violent, they aren't, in my head, like easily divertible. And the 17% or whatever that we're looking at, or the very few misdemeanors we have, those folks churn. So they may be in the process of being diverted. They need somewhere to land while they're diverted by the court. So while that process takes place, they're in our custody. But about 75% of them are in for more serious crimes. So I'd say that's why the diversion issue isn't working.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what I'm getting at. I mean, I think that numbers don't lie. And if you look at, and the courts do play an important role, we have to take that into consideration. It's not really up to this board as it relates to the justice system. It's up to the courts determining the placement, is my understanding, correct? I mean, they have to sign up on diversion.
Yes, so diversions would have to be approved by the court. Each judge is an independent officer, so there's no one else that regulates them but the court. The other component of the 17% that the sheriff is speaking to, that they believe, they're looking at just the charge. There may be something else that's holding that individual, right? So they may have a charge in another county. For those purposes, they can't be released. They may have a probation violation.
I want to expand. You asked a very good question, and a question that keeps on coming up for us as we work with all of our justice partners. And first of all, when I look at people in our custody, I really challenge our staff to look at somebody as if it was one of their family members. And I've had family members in the county jail. Maybe that's from personal experience or just the humanistic side of me. So when I look at that, when I first took office, I looked at the existing population, which was at about 14.5. I'm happy to say that as we sit here today, we've reduced the population by about 13.7%, down to what is averaging about 12.5 on a daily basis. That number fluctuates between 100 below and 100 above. With the court challenges we had last week, it went up because of the arraignments. So as we're looking at that population, I'm constantly challenging the staff. What do we do to continuously lower the numbers that we have? Can we get there? So we've maximized within the sheriff's department, and I gotta give a lot of credit to my staff, to really reduce the state prison population and others that need to be transported to state hospitals. That's how we've reduced that 13.7%. Now, getting to your question, the remaining population, I'm sure if we go through there, and I do challenge the staff, let's find others that if we release them would not be a threat to public safety or can be diverted, things along those categories. But even when I sit down with our justice partners, because there's been assumptions made that we can get our population down to 7,100, 7,000-ish. Even when I sit, and maybe it's unfair because I'm speaking for them, when I speak to the public defender and the alternative public defender, they're looking at me going, there's no way you could get this population down below 12,000. And as a matter of fact, if we look at the fact that you're looking at potential changes in legislation that are really focused on repeat offenders, specifically with theft or fentanyl, those are issues that us as a community, us as a county are going to have to look at years down the road to make sure that we have the adequate facilities. Today, we don't have adequate facilities. To the chair's point, should Men's Central Jail be there, that facility is horrible. I've said this publicly over and over, but there needs to be something in its place that looks at correctional care in a 21st century and looking beyond. The care that people deserve.
I'm
and
sorry,
if any of our family
you
members
say
were there.
that it needs to be replaced with a correctional care.
A correctional care facility, something that looks at rehabilitation, something that looks at mental health care, regular health care, that at the end of the day, for all of us, isn't our jobs that if somebody gets incarcerated, when they get out, to put them out better than when they came in? I think that's all of our responsibilities. And we do not have the facilities to do that. That's what we need to be looking at.
So your belief is that tearing it down is the right thing to do, which we all agree. But you also believe that the responsible thing to do is to look at I think you called it a care village before?
I'm calling it a Care First treatment campus.
Care
That's
First
what the
treatment
official name is of it, and it's all of our departments. It's not run by the Sheriff's Department, it's run by the County of Los Angeles, and it's looking at a whole person care.
So that was my next question, because I was wondering if it has to be run by department, or it could be run by an entity outside of law enforcement, but have a locked facility. I don't know what the post or the laws are.
In order for it to be successful, the Sheriff's Department cannot, should not, will not do this on our own.
Okay.
It has to be within collaboration with mental health, correctional health, rehabilitation, so all the services that the county offers in one collaborative effort type space, so that we make people better when they go out. That's the responsibility we all have.
So is it could it, and I don't know if this is a good analogy, but it would be similar to something like what is going on actually, Supervisor Mitchell, at the Martin Luther King, Augustus Hawkins, where it's a locked facility, but there's not law enforcement doing the treatment, it's actually medical. So it'd be something similar to that.
I think all the options should be on the table.
I think that's an important thing to talk about, because and thank you, Sheriff Luna, for actually acknowledging that we've got to do something. I think that's the first step toward admitting you've got a problem is acknowledging the problem. And I think that, I'm not saying you have a problem, I'm saying I think the problem for us has been admitting that we've got a problem and what do we need to go forward. And you've given us kind of you've given me an idea how to move forward, and that is, I think we've been all caught up with law enforcement running this facility, and that may be what was confusing matters, because at the end of the day, my goal is to make sure, to your point, that we release people in better shape than we got them. And I know, Dr. Belovich, you would agree with that. That's really, I think, been the most frustration for you, which leads me full circle to the report by Sybil Brand. And that is, I'm not good with chain of command, but I have to wonder if there's a noose in a cell, does your staff lead, or does the sheriff lead as it relates to identifying those type of things? Because to me, a noose in a cell, and I'm assuming that individual was under the care, because I can't remember in the report if it said that he was actually getting medical care, mental health treatment from you. But I'm concerned that even we're depending upon law enforcement alone to make sure these people are safe.
And the answer is it's everybody's responsibility. So if our healthcare staff are the first to notice it, they will alert custody staff to that danger. And they collaborate very much.
So I look forward to the investigation, because, again, I don't want to confuse the two. I think MCJ needs to be torn down no matter what. And today I had my aha moment, Sheriff, and I hope we don't do a motion asking for a report back on this too. But I hope, Fezia, that you will consider the fact that it doesn't have to be a sheriff-run facility. And that maybe you just open up a whole new door in terms of finally doing something. And I thank you for that. Thank you for being a leader as a sheriff, because we're going to make the decision, but you've got to live with whatever decision is made, as do the courts. So with that, again, I want to thank Sybil Brand for highlighting, because at the end of the day, these are people's brothers, sisters, daughters, sons, and we have an obligation, even though they may have committed a crime, to provide them with services that we would want for our loved ones. So with that, I look forward to working with you on, what is it called, Care First Treatment Center. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Supervisor Mitchell.
Thank you, ma'am. We have 2,344
who are in diversion going through that 1 year or 2 year process. And since its launch, we've had, well, actually since March of last year, we've had 7,100 people evaluated, but they didn't all qualify for one reason or another, either because of their acuity was too high and they're better suited for an ODR, or the courts and the prosecution didn't agree that they were suitable for diversion. But we have evaluated, and that's at 8 different courthouses where that program currently sits. We also want to share that we have folks that, when they are released, we did launch Warm Landing Place, the first version of Warm Landing Place, and so we have a provider that's actually at the exit of the jail to help connect people to services right away. And we give them transportation, we get them on emergency beds, we get them in housing. We also are working on an MOU right now with the...
What do we do? Meanwhile, then, let's provide the best treatment possible so we don't end up having the federal government continue to have their claw on our neck, so to speak, because it's costing us a lot of money. And I want to see that continued. I want to see that we have appropriate health care and that we have more lax flexibility with our custody staff and sheriffs. Because I think there are things that are happening in there that really could be taking off and they really haven't. And that is by way of providing better treatment to those that we have in custody that really are harmful to themselves, have mental illness, and they need a different kind of treatment and setting. And I know we're building out the pods right now, we're doing all that, which is great, and it's costing us a lot of money. I just don't think the public knows that. I don't think they understand all the things that we have done. And you know, I never thought I would end up saying all this on this side of the dais, but it's true. You all have worked very hard, and so have our employees, our union employees and our medical staff that are there. And I don't think they get enough credit either.
Go out and do.
People do come out of jail, they can land.
As a commissioner, it scared the heck out of me.
Oh, yeah.
It really did. And I just didn't know how to react. But as I saw my colleagues out there doing this month in and month out, the amount of visits that we're able to do, 2 visits a month, that's what we try to do. And the thing is that we try to do it in pairs because, I mean, we can talk and bounce ideas off of each other. It's really important to be able to come up with some of these maybe ideas as to how we might make the area, the jails, a little bit more humane. And that's the word that I have heard mentioned in this context many times. We talk about it in our meetings, and I'm really glad to hear that we also talk about it in this context of what we're hoping to accomplish.
Do you feel that you're being responded to? The concepts that you throw out there and ideas, and do you feel that you are being taken serious?
The challenge when we go out and make an inspection and we write up our reports, and I want to make sure that I emphasize the fact that when we're out in an inspection and we see something that can be corrected, we just don't wait till we get back to our work environments and write out our reports. We will talk to whoever might be the leadership there at the time and say, this is what we saw, do you think we can maybe correct it right away? But here's the challenge. We go, we leave, and we hope that it gets taken care of.
So nobody gets back to you on that?
When we have the more basic things, one of the things that I'll give it as an example. In June, now let's go back to March of 2023. There was no hot water in unit 4300C. No hot water. We went back there in June, and guess what? Still no hot water in that unit. So we would hope that our report would help create the change that we're hoping to create. And maybe in the whole scheme of things, maybe hot water isn't that important in some of the things that we report. But we want to make sure that we, in partnership, can come and say, this is what we saw, this is what we hope we'll see a change. And we hope that over time, that creation of a partnership, we don't see ourselves as working, outside, the confines of the opposite of the sheriff's department and others. It is my belief that we work in partnership, in concert, so that we can create that humane environment for our incarcerated population. And I will say that in support of the work that our sheriff's partners at those locations, they do listen to us, and we hope when we walk away for the day that they are corrected. So maybe that's a suggestion that I could put forward, is that when we make our report, that we get timely feedback on what we're reporting.
Right. So
I mean, if I can just say, this one that brought us to this area here today, what we saw the news hanging and when we were making that report, it brought us here. And I would like to say that maybe that's more the exception than the rule, but definitely when we are out there, we do get that information back, and we get it quick, so that when we go out there again, we don't have to say, okay, let's go up to 4300C and see if we still don't have hot water. Because I'll tell you, your motion has some very comprehensive areas that we have reported on. And sometimes we see the repeat of it. But I am thankful that this conversation is happening, because we truly have the best interest of the incarcerated. Right. We truly have the best interest of the staff who work there to create an environment where there's no conflict, to minimize whatever conflict, so that makes our LASD partners in this whole environment.
Hello, my name is Haley Broder. I'm a commissioner on the Civil Brand Commission for Institutional Inspections, and I'm here speaking on behalf of just myself. I am the one that conducted an inspection mentioned in the board report, where I watched jailers conduct ineffective safety checks and miss a literal noose in someone's cell, and then continue on not ensuring adequate conditions of confinement and safety. There have been multiple reports over many years of burning and retaliation and violence in front of inspectors, and it has gone on for years without improvement. I've seen mental health completely ignored, horrific, filthy conditions with trash everywhere in the jails, extreme heat and humidity. There was also a man whose cell was covered in mold and water, and he was using his clothes to sop up the water. The conditions are abhorrent. MCJ needs to be closed with no new jail replacement, with all partners on board. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Our next participant is Layla Murphy. Please unmute yourself and speak directly into your phone. You may begin.
Hello, my name is Layla, and I'm calling with the Justice LA Coalition and as a resident of Supervisorial District 5. Before I get to my real public comment, I have to say that I'm very disappointed by the notion by the board leaning towards a replacement facility, when many have acknowledged many times over that it's long past time for MCJ to close down with no replacement. We all read the May 10th Civil Brand Commission report, revealing once again the truly unimaginable abuse occurring behind the locked doors of Mountain Central Jail. The most recent SBC report assessed almost every single condition of confinement as unsatisfactory, all but one. This includes lack of access to food, water, medical care, abuse from deputies, and dangerous air quality and facility conditions, on top of the egregious event which you've all been mentioning throughout today's discussion. Clearly, the problem is not a lack of funding, as the sheriff tries to suggest. With an annual budget of $4.5 billion, LAFD continues to prove that no matter how many resources they have, they are in no position to keep
Your time
anyone
has
safe.
expired. Next speaker, please.
Our next participant is Roy Humphreys. Please unmute yourself and speak directly into your phone. You may begin.
Law enforcement by history is a criminal organization. Palo Alto was the highest criminal per capita city for its size in the United States. They implemented jails for all. Crime dropped 30% in 1 year. Jails work. Supervisor Hahn and company voted down $1.1 billion new men's jail facility, and that was less Supervisor Barger. Supervisor Solis voted down a 2,000-bed mental health facility. I believe that was in 2019. Thank you for that. And I told you all more than once, initiate that state amendment to make it so that the jails can be taken into a correctional department and taken away from the sheriff's department. And how do you cure 75 years of failed proper funding of the entire criminal justice system, Los Angeles County? Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Our next participant is Anthony Arena. You please unmute yourself and speak directly into your phone. You may begin.
Hi, my name is Anthony Arenas with the Justice LA Coalition and lifelong resident of District 3. I want to reiterate that I think we need to close the jail with no replacement and fully fund 10,000 community treatment beds. At the June 25th board presentation on the same Civil Rights Commission report, every single supervisor here agreed to close the jail. With the recent charter amendment that had your constituents concerned, I learned that all we need is for 3 supervisors to say yes to closing the jail with no replacement and fully funding community treatment beds, regardless of what the people you represent have to say. Well, now you've been hearing from your constituents to close the jail, and all 5 board members agreed to close the jail. And I'm asking that we do that with no replacement and 10,000 community treatment beds. And at the very least, I'm looking to you, Supervisors Mitchell, Horvath, and Solis. And while you break yet another promise, like the one to decarcerate all girls and trans youth 4 years ago,
Your time has expired.
If you would please introduce yourselves as you make your report. I think it was our expectation you might provide a presentation first, or do we want to just, okay, we'll turn to you for a presentation first, and then I will go to Supervisor Mitchell.
Good morning, or good afternoon, I'm sorry, been here since the morning, but good afternoon. I'd like to first acknowledge that this very comprehensive CEO report back delves into several key areas and lists some very complex challenges that all of our departments are facing in dealing with these issues within our community. In reading the report, it lays a foundation of the opportunities to improve our legislative efforts, our infrastructure, design, and strengthen our collaboration amongst all the agencies represented here today. But in this presentation, I'd like to take a few moments to describe the rise in public concern and the impacts that these issues have on our community members as well as our responding personnel. I'd like to touch a little bit about the department's education and enforcement efforts. And then I'd like to conclude by areas where I feel, or we feel, that we could get a little help from the board as well as the public to help us address this issue in a collaborative fashion. So in terms of some of the dangerous trends that we're observing when it comes to street racing and sideshows, as a number of participants have increased.
Oftentimes in which you live, and that's why and it's an adrenaline rush. I don't want to leave that part out of it. So as we look at solutions, we've got to look at things that provide those different opportunities. Lots of good things have happened with regards to moving along that process since that meeting. We actually
generation, they are youthful, they are rebellious, they don't fully appreciate danger and take on responsibility. I have told my team it's like folks' parents telling them not to listen to rock and roll music or not to listen to rap music, right? Because that was the new thing that was capturing the imagination of our youth. And so I feel like on the prevention piece, along the lines of what Director Carroll is saying, is it's almost like we need a credible messenger. The government is not going to be fully accessible and cool to this to this population. And I think there are some venues where education would work. And I almost feel like we have to have a proxy communications, not a firm, but a communications consultant.
Supervisors, Captain Joe Zizi, commander of the CHP's operation in South Los Angeles. I brought with me Lieutenant Steve Carapia. He is the commander in charge of the Street Racing Enforcement Unit for the Highway Patrol. So thank you for the invitation to have the Highway Patrol speak about the dangers of street racing and sideshows and takeovers. I look around the room and I see each of your staff members, the CEO and County Council have engaged us in the last year about this important topic, so I appreciate the collaboration. For people in the audience, why is the Highway Patrol here? The government code and the vehicle code requires the Highway Patrol to do all traffic in unincorporated areas. So we write the tickets, we handle the crashes in your unincorporated areas. The Highway Patrol, regarding street racing, has trained over 8,000 uniformed employees, both sheriff deputies and police officers across the state in street racing enforcement.
To a tizzy now, I forgot. For the record, and just say that every time we have an initiative here in the county of Los Angeles, we always come up against, folks that are opposed to things that we want to do. I'll never forget when I first arrived here. After a couple years, we worked on trying to get an initiative passed to increase funding for our parks. There are a lot of people who love parks, but there are a lot of people who don't like parks and don't like being charged a fee. But nonetheless, it was very popular. We found out after talking to people, and all I have to say is sometimes a democracy is hard. But in these cases, I think going to the voters, whether they support it or not, let them decide. And I think that's the best way to go. So thank you, Madam Chair, and appreciate the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Supervisor Barger.
Thank you, and I want to thank you, Supervisor Mitchell, not only for continuing to raise important and pressing unanswered questions, but also for having the vision originally to bring this forward. And as I recall, when you brought it forward, this board wanted to study it. And so I don't know what changed between when you brought it forward and when others wanted it studied to now we don't need to study it anymore. We need to make it move forward. And oh, by the way, we're going to add elected CEO. So I just feel I'm trying to put that together, Supervisor Hahn, because I think you actually originally did want it studied, and you made compelling arguments as to why, when it was brought forward by Supervisor Mitchell, that it should be studied. And at another time, now is not, because it's going to be voted on today. The votes are there, but I just can't reconcile what changed between then and now. I mean, I know that you are doing this, and I remember when Supervisor Hahn, your father, brought this forward, and for me the question has always been 7, 9, 15. I don't know what the number is. That was what I thought we were hoping to get out of the study. So I believe that the unincorporated areas, if you were to poll them, and it was confirmed, I think I'm going to get from Fernando the stats, the unincorporated feel disenfranchised from this county. They feel like they are the stepchild of LA County. And yet that is our role as supervisors, is to be the elected official over the unincorporated areas. And so I take that to heart. And that's why in my unincorporated areas, they do support expanding the board, because they feel that the representation will get better. Not understanding how it's going to be broken up. I think that the fundamental changes to the county government through an elected executive and expanded board will not go into effect until 4 to 8 years, respectively. So I don't have a clear answer as to why we would rush forward this proposal at the 11th hour without conducting the thorough stakeholder engagement that a reform initiative of this magnitude should entail. So when I hear 900 people were engaged, 900 out of 10 million, and you're not going to get all 10 million, but still, I mean, I have to wonder how that all came to be. I mean, I think when you do a poll, you usually, unless it's a scientific poll, you poll with questions based on what you hope to get out of that poll. And so I'm not hearing in my district overwhelming support for the elected. I am for the expanded board. So I will make sure I push out to my constituency that this was not something that was originally anticipated when the motion that you brought forward, Supervisor Mitchell, and I think it was with Supervisor. Did you co-author a motion? I can't remember who it was with. Oh, with Supervisor, with Chair Horvath. I also remain concerned about utilizing cost savings to pay for the expanded government structure, and the fact that it will impact vacant positions and limit a department's ability for the future to fulfill vacancies. And I kind of chuckled last week when I asked Feezy about that, and the comment was the board will make that determination. Under the new CEO structure, the board won't make that determination. That is power being given to the CEO and the elected. Unless you can get 2/3 a vote, as I recall, to overturn or veto whatever the elected CEO wants to do. And given that we can't even get 3 votes to close our jail, I don't know how you're going to get 2/3 to agree on something like that. I'm sorry? No, I mean well, it's still, the jail is still standing. Well, we got the votes to close it, but we haven't executed what closure means. It's true. It's true. I don't, unless I'm missing something, the jail is still standing. And we just had a discussion about that. So I'm saying it's still standing. We haven't done anything to tear it down. I don't see any plan as to when it's going to be torn down. I really want to emphasize process. I agree with Supervisor Mitchell that the process and how this played out to me is astounding. And the fact that deals were cut and that promises were made, or whatever I'm hearing, is sad for me, because this is a county that this board in the past could agree to disagree, but it was never done in a way that was so, to me, dishonest, quite frankly. Having said that, I will aggressively be vocal about my concerns about why this is a step in the wrong direction. I think it's going to undermine other measures that are going to be on the ballot that have far more significant impact on this county, whether it be the homeless or whether it be firefighting. And I think that's unfortunate, but obviously it's 3-2 again, which, by the way, it's great to have 2 instead of 4-1. So thank you for that, Supervisor Mitchell. So having said that, let's call for the vote, I guess.
We do have more discussion, but I want to ask, you raised the question of deals cut and promises made, and I just want to know what you mean by that.
Just what I heard, Supervisor Mitchell, or Supervisor Horvath, I heard that you and Supervisor Solis were working on this, and that Supervisor Solis decided she didn't want her name on it. I'm just telling you what I've heard. And that in return you went to Supervisor Hahn and asked Supervisor Hahn to co-author it. Now, whether it's true or not, I'm honest. I'm telling you what I've heard, and if I've heard it, I will guarantee you that it's been talked about amongst other people, because I'm usually the last on the food chain to hear this kind of stuff.
I appreciate the honesty, and you know that when I first came onto the board, you also shared with me things that you heard through the grapevine about me as a candidate and as a potential colleague that were not true. So I just want to acknowledge what you're, it's something that you heard, and I think that it's fair to share, but it's not honest. And so I just...
So you're saying it's not true that
It's not true. It's not true at all. And so I appreciate raising questions if there are actually questions, but when there's an inference that something untoward is happening, I want to make sure I address that directly, because that's not what happened. Supervisor Mitchell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I didn't want to get
the phone. You may begin.
Thank you. I don't know how to unmute myself, but I just feel like, Horvath gets a little credit for being brave, but the process has been bad. And to look at the county CEO as an elected position, it really does not pop into focus as the resolution to some of these problems. What? I mean, Davenport is competent. She can write up a plan. I don't understand. The voters would have told her what kind of a plan to write up. No, the legislative body, that the 5 supervisors would. And frankly, I think that in the old days, 5 supervisors was smart, but consider this: the city ethics commission is already, it doesn't work, but it's functional. Why not just have one ethics commission for Los Angeles and have them absorb the 5, or you bring it to 9 supervisors, so they're just one place to get the information we need, like who's been giving over $250. And why don't we do that at the city for the great city ethics commission? Why don't they announce when they're getting donations over $250? I would recommend tabling this whole thing.
Thank you.
And getting over to
Your
friends
time
and
has
finding
expired.
out how many
Next speaker,
fall.
please.
Our next participant is David Torres. Please unmute yourself.
Please.
Our first participant is Eric Preven. Please unmute and speak directly into your phone. You may begin.
Well, it's Eric Preven from Studio City, and what a light and airy little meeting. I mean, it's nice to kind of get together and just chit-chat about a couple items as opposed to bogging down to a long, drawn-out thing. Although this did take a very long time, and it has been extremely fractious because it's hard to, stay in it for so long. I'd like to see the actual costs. Has that been posted yet of how much it's going to cost to do this great idea? Maybe there's a link for that somewhere. But I think we need to have more perky meetings, less rally, more democracy. So messy, yes, but have fun in France.